Go for it.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's that time again. It's Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, and you know that it's time to hang with Harley. Harley Schlanger is somebody who needs no introduction to this audience. He's basically the Jiminy Cricket of global events. He is the man who brings veritas and truth as well as balance into what's going on in the world, helping us to focus on the key issues at hand. So, without any further ado, Harley, how are you, sir? So many things are going on, and my head is spinning.
Well, I just finished an article on why the elites are so upset about Trump, and I'll probably cover some of that in the course of our discussion today. But what we're seeing is a convergence of several different things. But what we're focused on at LaRouche PAC is one of the angles or one of the flanks Trump could play to totally undermine this ludicrous media intelligence community assault against him. And that's by getting out the truth about Ukraine.
Yeah.
Because look, the basis of the sanctions against Russia is what? It's that Russia supposedly invaded Ukraine, took Crimea, and acted in an aggressive way, ignoring borders, and on and on and on. It's a fiction. What happened in Ukraine was a coup, a color revolution, as it was called by the person who invented the term, Gene Sharp. It was designed to take down one country after another, especially countries on the border with Russia and China, to put pressure on Russia and China to force them to acquiesce to the global financial system, which Russia and China was running away from because it was collapsing. And so we just put out a dossier with Executive Intelligence Review, a fact sheet on who is involved in this, the neocons directly in terms of Mrs. Robert Kagan, Victoria Nuland, the Undersecretary of State, who was caught on a cell phone basically saying to the US ambassador in Ukraine, here's who we're going to put in office.
Yeah.
Yats is the guy. And of course, everyone in the West thought Klitschko, the boxer, was the guy, but nope, Victoria called it and they put him in.
Mm-hmm.
Now, also involved George Soros, who has almost over $3 billion at his disposal in his various funds, open society foundations, to deploy to destroy countries. And that money now is going out in the tens of millions to groups in the United States against Trump.
Mm.
And so the fact that Trump said he's open to a discussion process with Putin that could lead to the end of sanctions and could lead to collaboration against terror. Well, why did the elite react, or the so-called elite react in such a hysterical way? It's because they have so much to hide. And what is underneath this is their fear that they're all going to end up in jail, including
Yeah.
Soros, including Barack Hussein Obama. You know, Trump did something this week that got almost no publicity. You know, if Trump sends out a tweet on something, it's the headline story for the next 24 to 48 hours. Here he did something of great significance. He took the Senate Intelligence Committee report on CIA detention and torture. And this is something that Bush wanted covered up. This is something Obama covered up, not just
Yeah.
to protect Bush, but also to protect Brennan, his CIA director and pal with the drone killings. Obama wanted it to be not only covered up, but the CIA tried to destroy the report. There's only one copy left. Trump's Justice Department officials delivered that one unredacted copy to a federal court on February 10th. This is the potential basis for a whole series of indictments. Now, if they also release the files on Ukraine to show how deep the US was in terms of the CIA working together with Soros and other agencies in overthrowing an elected government, combined with Michael Flynn, who now has a bit of an edge, a chip on his shoulder, you might say. Flynn has the details on Obama's arming of the terrorists in Syria. So all of a sudden, Trump has some cards that he can play. So we're seeing in the short term a more desperate escalation on the strategic side by this global establishment, which is used to having their way. Now, that's why it's important for people to realize that this is not just something you can shrug your shoulders at and say, well, they're doing it again. They always do it. They always win. Not necessarily. They can be defeated. But we've got to make sure that Trump sharpens the knives and goes for the jugular with Soros, with Obama, with whatever officials they find, the so-called Obama holdovers who are leaking. And then on top of that, the other flank LaRouche has said he's got to play is Glass-Steagall, to take the power away from the financial elite. Now, I have a quick update. Remember last week we were talking about the situation in Greece. The IMF acknowledges that Greece is uncreditworthy, can't pay off the existing debt, but they say there's no solution but to give them more money, another 80-something billion euros. But the problem they're coming up against is a really interesting one. They need 7 billion euros by the end of June, and they don't have it. So here they are talking about dispensing another 80 billion over the course of the next year, but they don't even have 7 billion needed to keep things going through June. That's the problem they have. Now, and I'm sure, V, you've covered this in some of your other venues, but HSBC is cratering. The British banking system is collapsing. And Mario Draghi is putting out the report that Europe is in better shape than it's ever been. At the same moment, he's calling everyone he knows saying, can we get a few euros credit to bail out the banks that are about to lose everything from a default on Greece? So this is the desperation of this elite. And all we see of it is unsourced lies in the New York Times and the Washington Post. And by the way, let me just add one other point that I made in my article. Did anyone happen to notice that the Washington Post parent company, Amazon, just got a $600 million contract from the CIA for Amazon Web Services to provide computing cloud technology to the CIA?
That's great.
So here's the Washington Post getting favorable leaks from the CIA. At the same point, they're getting 600 million, and that's the non-black budget. In other words, that's the one that's acknowledged. Who knows how much else is going into Amazon and some of these other Yahoo, Facebook, and some of these other agencies that are interfacing with the deep state.
Yeah, right. Exactly correct. Absolutely correct. Um, it's tremendous to see all these things that are occurring globally, and the deep state, as some would call it, the establishment, have really worked themselves up to a frenzied level of resistance. Harley, it's unbelievable. I've never seen it to this level where there's so much vitriol, so much hatred, and such a concerted effort from not only politicians but entertainers, celebrities, sports stars. I mean, you name it. It seems to be they've made it almost a fashion to attack Trump. It's
Well,
incredible.
and two of the latest, you have Nicholas Kristof on why we have to get rid of Trump, which I think was a couple days ago after his press conference, after Trump's press conference. That was his editorial or his op-ed. And then you have this deranged psycho, Andrew Sullivan, who somehow keeps getting hired, now writing for New York Magazine, The Madness of King Donald. And
Yeah.
he writes that we have to start asking questions about Trump's mental and emotional health. Now, from what I can tell, what I saw in the Melbourne, Florida rally last Saturday, and also the press conference that freaked the press out completely, Trump said, I'm speaking to you, the American people, because I need an unfiltered way of getting to you, because the media lies. The media is on the other side. They've done quite well, along with a handful of other people, from a system that's broken.
Hmm.
So what we're seeing from Trump is not dysfunction or raving, but going back to his Charlotte, North Carolina, October 26th campaign address, where he said, we're going to take down this intelligence community, this Bush network, the Clinton networks, and we're also going to put handcuffs on Wall Street with Glass-Steagall. We're waiting for that second point. But as I said, LaRouche, and you can see this on LaRouche Pack, said he's got to go after the Obama-Soros operation to create a Maidan Square coup in the United States, and secondly, take the power away from them by handcuffing them with Glass-Steagall. Those are the two strategic weaknesses that the enemy has. Now, beyond that, Look, the Chinese have just written several articles in Xinhua, the official Chinese paper, saying Trump's a businessman. We can deal with him.
Hmm.
Uh, he, there are things he says we don't agree with. That's okay. That's part of the negotiating process.
Correct.
You have Abe, who met with Trump and went back to Japan singing his praises, saying, this is someone we can work with. You have leaders like Erdogan who will be coming to Washington soon, after he was really shunned by Obama because of his turn toward Russia. And then you have people in the Trump administration talking favorably about the Astana process, which is the Syrian post-war reconstruction process, which right now is Syria, Russia, Turkey, and Iran. But people around Trump saying that the US should be involved in that. And then finally, just to complete the picture, the Chinese are having a major conference in Beijing in May on the basically upgrading the new Silk Road, or the One Belt, One Road process. And they have commitments from at least 25 governments to attend. Today, the Italians confirmed they would go. Theresa May says she's going, although who knows what she's going to do there. But Trump has been invited. Putin will be there. This will be the next opportunity for the United States to move toward this global infrastructure plan. And if you look at what's happening in California now, with the dams breaking down, has there ever been a better reason why we need a massive infrastructure investment plan in the United States than the fact that our existing infrastructure is outdated and collapsing?
Exactly. That is proof positive. It's still funny. Trump talks about infrastructure, then they have a damn problem. Trump talks about Sweden having migrant issues, and then the next day it's like the rioting occurs. It's incredible to see it.
Well, obviously, he's not getting this from the CIA, so his channels are better than the so-called intelligence community.
Yeah, seriously.
Uh, on the infrastructure, there's more proof that Trump should go ahead and not listen to the naysayers. Alan Greenspan, one of the most incompetent economists or corrupt economists who's ever served in a prominent position, wrote that we don't need infrastructure because the economy is going so well,
Oh
and
my
it would
God.
cause inflation. Then Sebastian Mallaby, who's got the Paul Volcker chair at the CFR, who wrote a bio on Greenspan talking about how Greenspan was the greatest thinker of the 20th century. Mallaby said his article in the Washington Post was headlined, "Don't mess with it, the economy is going great."
Hmm.
Now, these are people who are essentially saying to Trump, you're going to have the plug pulled on you if you go ahead with what you promised the American people. Now, the precedent for this is what Greenspan did with Bill Clinton back in 1992 in December after Clinton was elected. And one of the things Clinton said is, we're going to start a jobs program with infrastructure. Uh, Bob Woodward wrote in his book Maestro, which was just
Yeah, about the Greenspan.
praise of Greenspan, that Greenspan convinced Clinton, don't spend on infrastructure, just cut the deficit. Wall Street will love you, the markets will go up, and you'll win a second term. Clinton followed Greenspan's advice, and we had bubbles pop in 98, 99, and 2000.
One after the other.
Yeah. So, and there's no reason, it's a good reason why Greenspan's nickname is Bubbles. It's not because he takes a daily bubble bath. He just loves bubbles.
He does take bubble baths, though.
Yeah. And his great, well, what would you say? The fact that he probably takes them with Andrea Mitchell is a disgusting thought.
Oh, that is a disgusting thought. I just lost my lunch. Oh my God.
But here we have these people who have failed in everything they've tried. They've imposed their economic theories, their financial rocket science, and it's crashed. It doesn't work. The Greek situation is such a perfect example. Yes, the IMF says the Greek economy is contracting, which makes it less creditworthy. That's why we have to give them more credit.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Exactly. Exactly correct.
So this is the kind of insanity that we see coming up against Trump. Now, look, if it were up to me, if we had a better person than Trump, who was a better thinker, more systematic, and so on, it would have been better. If Lyndon LaRouche were 30 years younger, 20 years younger, that would have been an ideal choice.
Right.
But Trump's what we have. and he's standing firm. He's not capitulating. You know, this idea that it's dysfunction and there's competing discussions going on. What the hell's wrong with that?
Yeah.
They're having debates over policy. But the one thing that I just can't get over is that as Flynn was brought down, nobody raised the question of who is tapping Flynn's phone. You know, is the NSA really tapping the National Security Advisor's phone?
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
answer is yes.
Yeah.
They're spying on the president. So
Done.
the same networks that Clapper said are not keeping metadata are now watching every step and every move of Trump, of people like his old friend Roger Stone, people like Paul Manafort, as well as the generals and others who he's brought in. It's a gotcha game that's out of control. But I think one of the things we're doing, and I want to give out a number for people to call if you want to be part of this mobilization. We're in an all-out mode to try and get Trump to put Glass-Steagall in his State of the Union message. There are now 30 congressmen, 31, 30 of whom are Democrats, and one is the very courageous Republican Walter Jones of North Carolina, who
Mm.
have signed on for a new Glass-Steagall bill. And these Democrats are saying to Trump, we want you to join us. Now, we have to communicate to the Congress and to the White House that Trump should go with this if he wants to protect his presidency and protect the country from
Right.
this bunch of coup plotters and killers. So a number you can call to get more information on what we're doing and to become part of the mobilization. It's not an easy number, but I'll give it a couple times, and I think you can post it. It's 551 237 5311. That's a LaRouche PAC number on the mobilization to defend the nation from the deep state. So it's 551 237 5311. Now, I won't be answering the phone. That's in one of our offices, I believe, in New Jersey. But you can talk to people there who will give you a picture of what we're doing to get Glass-Steagall into the State of the Union address.
Yeah. Hello?
So that's something people can do. Now, the other thing is go to LaRouchePAC.com and find the EIA dossier on Ukraine. It's compelling reading because it just, like there was a press conference in Berlin 2 days ago by some writers who were talking about the political prisoners in Ukrainian prisons who are against the regime because of the corruption of the existing regime in Kiev and the Nazis in the defense and security apparatus who are being tortured
Mm.
in violation of all international law, and the media won't cover it because the
Yeah.
Kiev regime, the Nazi-loving regime in Kiev, is owned lock, stock, and barrel by Soros, the CIA, and NATO, and the other deep state operations.
It's I have it's a loss of words, man. I'm living in La La Land. You got Nazis that are in power in Ukraine. We have feminists screaming Allah Akbar in Times Square here in New York. I've lost it. I need a vacation.
Well, now is the time for you not to go on vacation.
Yeah, exactly. You're right about
Your
that.
voice is critical, the voice of your listeners and your supporters, because we actually won a battle with the November 8th election. Not the war. We won a battle and shocked the hell out of the establishment because they thought that they were invulnerable. They thought nothing could touch them. And they're scrambling more desperately because they realize now not only are they vulnerable, but Trump knows it.
Mm.
And some people are getting that message and that idea. So we've got to fight this thing out. The next weeks are crucial because if you don't move ahead on the strategic front with Russia and China and against the EU and against the Wall Street London crowd, you're going to have a danger of a financial collapse or a war. That's what the establishment has to offer. And once you have those things occur, Trump's hands will be tied, probably because he'll be in court or in impeachment proceedings by the same people. So while he still has the freedom to act, he has to act. Now he's doing his job. We've got to do ours.
Yeah, absolutely correct. And this kind of support, this groundswell of support, will go a long way to not only giving him the encouragement that he needs, but letting the establishment knows that we're not backing down. We're not going to go quietly into the night. We're not going to allow these left-wing simps to raise towns and villages and college universities all in the name of frivolous nonsense. We're going to stand up to this, and that it's very key. It's very important that we mobilize as a counter-revolution to what is happening with the moves that are done by the deep state, Harley. I totally agree.
Well, I think we're the revolution. They're the counter-revolution. But,
Correct.
it's an interesting example. I do a regular radio show in Salt Lake City. And one of the topics we've had is why was he so subservient to Obama? Why didn't he do more against Obama? Well, we put a lot of pressure on him around the Mnuchin Soros mole that was being put in as head of the Treasury Department. And Mike Lee last week used an opportunity before the Senate to call for an investigation of what Soros is doing in Macedonia.
Yeah.
Where it's coordinated with government funds and his own funds. Now, we're now putting the call into Mike Lee saying, well, that's a good step, but Macedonia is the mouse that roared. What about what Soros is doing to overthrow the elected president of the United States? And that's the question people have to put to the Congress. You don't like Trump? Fine. Fight him in the Congress. Argue with him. Debate with him. But don't allow a bunch of coosters, people who have run coups, people who have assassinated elected officials, who have destroyed nations. Don't allow them to bring this color revolution to the United States. And while we're at it, let's shut them down so they can't do it anywhere else.
Yep, absolutely. I agree with you 1000%. Closing statements, Harley, and how people could follow you, your work, and the LaRouche Pack contact websites.
Well, it's LAROUCHEPAC.com. I've gotten many letters or emails from your listeners. They can reach me at harleysch@gmail.com. And if you want to do something quick and effective, call us at 551-237-5311. And let's see if we can get Trump to really drive the elite crazy by what he does at the State of the Union address.
Absolutely. And we'll also be posting that number on our website as well. Harley Schlanger, thank you so much again for sitting down with this fireside chat, letting us know the recap, the summary of all the events in the world that are so pertinent, so important for us to be paying attention to, and helping to motivate us and mobilize us, because, man, we got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, we should do, but we can do it.
Absolutely. We can win. It's ours. It's ours to lose. Let's put it that way. We've already won this thing. It's ours to lose. Let's keep it away from them.
Yes, let's not snatch defeat from the jaws of victory.
Exactly. Absolutely. Harley, thank you so much for being on, and thank you for everyone for chiming in and listening in. Take it away, CJ.